You're getting fully stripped down, no makeup, editing all day, Katya, right now. And I have been gone for quite a while, so I believe that you guys deserved a little bit of an explanation as to why. Hi! You gonna help me? You're so handsome. You gonna help me? There's been a lot of very big life updates, some amazing, some rough. My partner moved in with me, so we were moving for a pretty long period of time and painting the house and fully redecorating. I also got a new full-time job. I'm the head of production at Fable Studio, which is the head of Showrunner AI. But the biggest reason is that I got extremely sick this year. After 24 doctor's appointments in the period of 3 months, we finally know what I am sick with and all the systems that it affects, which in some ways is a very positive and relieving and exciting thing, because there's answers, and answers usually mean that there's something we can do about it. But it's also very frustrating because the answers that I received don't have simple solutions. There's not simple stuff that I can do to feel better. So being very sick and having a new job and all these other major life events that have been going on, it's been very hard to keep up with this podcast and my other podcast, because filming a video takes a pretty significant amount of energy. There's scripting and planning and even just setting up all of the equipment and then editing. It's a lot. So there's been times where I'll have a spout of energy and I would film a couple of episodes, but then I would never have the energy to actually edit them. And even getting that bout of energy to film the episodes was pretty difficult. So that's why I've been gone for a long time. I can't promise that I'll be back super consistently until I have gotten deeper into my treatment. So for now, I can just say that I am editing the couple of videos that I've already filmed and am very excited to film some more when I can. For this episode, I interviewed this guy named Johnny. He is an indie filmmaker who made an entire feature for $2,000, which is such an amazing accomplishment. And he is now self-distributing this film. This film looks like it was made for $500,000, if not $750,000. I could not believe him that he only spent $2,000 on it. It's called The Documents, and check out my interview with him now.
I just don't want to be a UFO reporter anymore.
Just take up this story and I'll let you work whatever you want. How about that?
And if I refuse?
I'll promote you to customer.
Oh.
Come on. What's the worst that could happen? So, worst case scenario, you have to stay with your parents for a while.
Exactly. Worst case scenario.
Hi.
Ah.
Yes, hi.
My name is Marissa Britton, and
Could you tell me if the briefing contained discussion on the documents?
The documents.
These leaked quote-unquote alien documents?
I can't confirm that.
What can you tell me then?
Now, what I'm about to share with you is highly classified.
Really?
Really?
Really? Wow.
Sounds like bullshit to me.
What are you talking about, bitch?
Guys, shut up!
Who are you?
Someone who needs your help.
This is crazy.
But we can't let these docs fall into the wrong hands.
This is a big scoop.
Marissa, this isn't your assignment.
I need to tell this. Hello, sir, can you hear me? Are you jacking off?
No. What? No.
The first thing I always ask people to do is to introduce themselves, like tell your backstory of how you got into film and then also who you are now.
Yes. So my name is Johnny Cruz, and I make now I make feature films, and hopefully I'll continue to make feature films for a long time. I got obsessed with movies when I was in high school because I started watching too much of them. And then I was like, if my grades are going to be this bad, I might as well make it worth it and try to make some of these and try to justify my slacking off in high school. And, through college and in the years after college and through making short films, I was able to build a very reliable team of, friends and family who help us make movies. And we have a podcast called The Director Dossiers, me and Danny Barker, who's our sound man on all these movies, where we go through a director's entire filmography through a historical context, but also talk about our thoughts on all the movies as well, and basically just everything. In terms of what I do, other than making movies, or doing something with the movies, there's not much that I do that doesn't involve making movies. I golf, and that's pretty much it.
With the shorts that you were making, were you like doing festivals and like meeting people at festivals? Like what was the moment when you were making these shorts that you were like, let's do a feature? Like we are, I feel that we are ready to do a feature.
Well, I've only been to 2 film festivals. Shadowtown got into one. And then I had another small one that I made during the pandemic with my sister called Upon Reflection. That was like a 2-minute short film. I made like 3 of those with her during the pandemic. So no, I wrote the first draft of the script thinking that it would be like a 30-minute movie. Because there was a section in the original script that was like her making funny phone calls. And I was like, what if because that's the easiest part for us to do. So why don't we just make a 30-minute one of her doing that? And then I wrote out the script, and it was like 60 pages long. And I was like, all right, the second draft will have to be 30, I have to cut this down somehow. And the second draft was 72 pages. So I was like, okay, I guess we're making a feature.
How did you come up with the idea for it? Was it a dream project that you'd already thought of, or did you kind of say, okay, I want to make a feature. What do we have? What can we make a feature with? I
realized that one of my favorite parts of writing screenplays was doing the research. And so I was like, wait a minute, if I make a script about UFOs, I can just research UFOs, because watching video, like the culture of the whole UFO thing is like the best thing ever. And so that was like the excuse for like, I'm writing a script on UFOs, which is, it was just, but then I originally wrote it as like, a spec script that would, if it was made, it would cost like $20 million, let's say. And then I forget exactly how it came about, but my friends Mark and Sarah, we were just talking about making something on our own, and we're like, why don't we just make a feature on our own? Because we made that one 39-minute one I mentioned earlier, Shadowtown, and we're like, I think we can make a feature now. And so I looked at all the other, all my scripts, and I was like, which one of these can I make into something that I could make? So what I just did is I took that script for the documents that I originally wrote, and then I just scaled it down to something that we could make.
What were the types of things you had to cut and think about in terms of trying to make a feature with no money?
In the original draft or the original script, it was sort of like it starts out as like a journalistic procedural and then sort of becomes like a cross-country road trip movie, sort of like a getaway movie almost. And obviously I can't do any of, that stuff. I just had to keep it in the one room. So I was writing the script, and also if for anybody listening, the premise of the movie, just so it's, it's easier for me to explain, it's in March 2020, an ambitious tabloid reporter cooped up in quarantine has to look into rumors of tell-all leaked UFO documents to keep her job, but she gets swept up in a conspiracy that can make or break her career. So while I was writing, I said I have to find an excuse to keep her in the room, because the story kept wanting her to go outside and go to her office at work or something. Like the audience might, be suspicious of, why is she never leaving this place? Why are we never seeing her boss? And then I came up with the idea of setting it during COVID. And that was the perfect excuse, because not only can she not leave, but it also, can also touch upon the paranoia that we all felt being cooped up in our houses. And the only, the only barometer for how the world was doing was through this dumb little square that we all have in our pockets. You know what I mean? So, and then once I had COVID, it was much, much easier to make the story, I guess, believable and much more realistic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, when I was watching it, I was curious, like, when COVID was added into it, if it was written to be a COVID movie or written to be, because there are some movies out there that their goal was to kind of encapsulate the experience of COVID so that, 20 years from now, people can watch and be like, oh, that's what it was like. So I was curious if that was your initial goal, or if you were like, okay, I've made this movie and now I need to think of some sort of device. So it's really interesting to hear that it was a device that kind of came later. How many drafts do you think you did of the script, and how many people do you think read the script before you felt like it was finished?
So the original like spec script that I mentioned that would have costed like $1 billion was, I think I did 10 drafts of that. And then for this script, I did, the scaled down version. I think I did like maybe 5 or 6 and then like a shooting draft. And then also the only 3 people who read it and gave me notes on it were, I have a writer's group.
Did you feel like getting notes from these people was a really important part of your process, or were you sort of like, I can pretty much do this on my own?
I don't think I thought I can do it on my own. That was like the first lesson, that I can't do it on my own, but also writing our script, our next movie, Beach Days, DAZE, not, DAYS. We recently just, with our team, just had a bunch of script meetings with that. And that even more so, I was like, there's no way. They were giving me such great ideas. And they also told me a lesson of whenever there's a problem in the script, it's not going to go away no matter how good you film the movie.
The script was very surprisingly tight. I only say surprisingly because that tends to be, when someone's making their first feature, that tends to be the issue, is that, they just sort of expand upon a short film and it feels like that's what it is. But this film did not feel that way. It felt like a very, very tight feature. And that's probably because you did do 15 drafts and you got notes from 3 different people and you did a significant amount of research on both the topic and the genre. And then you also have worked hard at writing. So you're already a talented writer. And I don't think people understand sometimes how much work goes into just the script phase of the movie. They think the script is the easiest part and then filming is the hardest part, when sometimes the script can be the hardest part because you're facing a blank page, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think people tend to forget about script writing because the filming part of it is sort of the most romanticized. But with my view in it, I started in the screenwriting phase, because some people, I don't know, I've never been to film school, but and since I didn't go, I was like, okay, it would make sense to me if I just started the screenwriting stuff first. So then I told you earlier, I started writing features, even though if they weren't good, I was still practicing doing it. And then I started practicing, the filming and editing of them. So for me, I don't know, for anybody else, but for me, I thought it was very helpful to sort of do it in order and not start filming first and then figure out how to write stories later.
And I also think that people don't always know that you can write the script while you're filming. You can see that something's not working on screen. And then, I've done that. My film that won South by Southwest, we literally rewrote the entire ending of the movie while we were filming it because we realized that the ending didn't make any sense because of what we filmed before. So did you do that a lot? Did you rewrite it while you were filming, and how did you do that?
We did the exact same thing you did, only we rewrote the beginning. Because so the script starts out of it's like a scene of them in the woods and some silly stuff happens, and then it cuts right to COVID. Mm-hmm. But halfway through shooting, I realized this isn't really getting I can't really set up her character that much in that scene because there's too much going on. Mm-hmm. So I added about maybe 7 scenes. Maybe 10 pages of script in the beginning of the movie while we were shooting, and that actually served a purpose. It helped with the character arc. I don't think it slowed down the movie that much.
It did.
But also, what it also did, because I remember, I was listening to the commentary track for Christopher Nolan's first movie, Following, which he made for $6,000, and he talks about how in one of the first scenes for the movie they got a dolly track, so that they can show off to the audience all these crystal clear, smooth camera shots, so that the rest of the movie being shot handheld was seemed like a deliberate creative choice rather than a budgetary constraint. So we did that with locations. So the first 7 scenes of the movie all are at different locations before COVID, with a bunch of people who don't show up in the movie again, to sort of give the audience the sense that we could have had all these locations and we could have had all these actors, and the rest of the movie of Sarah, Marissa, being in quarantine was just a deliberate choice rather than a budgetary constraint, which it was. And that was like one of the biggest lessons I learned.
That's brilliant. I've never heard that before. That's brilliant. Oh my
Thanks.
God, that's so brilliant. Wow. Because it was something I like noticed even as a producer when I was watching it. You did have a significant amount of locations in the beginning, and then she's in her house and she's doing research. And there was never a moment while watching it that I thought, well, why is she still in the house? There was never a moment that I thought that, because it made sense. It made sense for the story, and the script was really tight, so it just kind of flowed. And so, like I guess I just felt that subconsciously. But now that you say it, I'm like, wow, that's so smart. That's really, really smart. Wow.
And also, I have to shout out, like, all those locations. It wasn't just, like my idea to do that. We even if I had the idea to do that, I still needed people who can let us film at those locations. So I used the house where my grandparents lived, where my aunt lives now, in Harrison, and I used that for 2 locations in the movie. Chris Huson, who is my cousin's boyfriend, I think that's how you pronounce his last name. If I mispronounced it, I'm sorry. But he has this. He runs this place called Tommy Boy's Cafe in, I believe, Tom's River, in New Jersey, and he owns that. So he let us film there for the scene where Mark and Sarah, Marissa and George, the characters' names, are having one of their first conversations, or you know what I mean. So and also our sound man Danny Barker, his father Ray Barker was working in that office building that you see in the first couple minutes of the movie.
In what order did you get things? Did you just write knowing, okay, this person has an office, this person has a shop, this person has this, so I'm going to put those locations in the script? Or did you put those locations in the script and then reach out to your community and figure out if you could find those locations?
So pretty much all the locations in the script, I knew that, like, I was close enough or talked to the person enough where I definitely knew I can get that location. Like the the campfire in my backyard, the house in my grandparents' house in Harrison that I mentioned, where my dad grew up, and the cafe. Like I just asked my cousin Jenna and her boyfriend Chris, and I said, hey, do you think I could film there? And they're like, absolutely. The only 2 scenes where I was like, I wasn't sure how we're gonna get this location was the office, of course, and then later there's a scene which I'm not going to spoil where Marissa does leave her house for like a scene and it comes back, and then I had no idea where we were going to film that. Luckily, of course, like I mentioned, Ray Barker hooked us up with his offices, and then luckily with the other scene, my friend Danny, who I mentioned, who's the sound engineer who does the sound in the movie, he was working at this place called Ever Artist Productions, which does like I guess lights and sound for when like cover bands or something do a show at like a bar in Asbury Park in New Jersey or something like that. You know what I mean? So and I worked a couple shifts with him, and I asked, can we film a scene here? And he said, absolutely. And so we basically were able to get like a warehouse to film one of the scenes in, which was, and we thanked all those people in the credits. The guy's name was Ryan Kelly, who helped us out. So
you said the budget was $2,500, which is truly insane for a feature. I one time spent $9,000 on just a week of food, just lunches, God. Not even dinner. It was just lunch. It was $9,000, just the food.
Were they 3-course lunches?
They were very good lunches. So when I saw that you told me it was only $2,500, I literally was like, I don't think I could feed my crew for one day for that amount of money. So where did that money go within your budget?
So this is another thing that falls into like, really thinking about what I had access to, because I still live with my parents, right? And the room I'm in now is like another house on our property, which the top floor of it is furnished, which is where we film. Like, I'm in the same room where Marissa, her office is, and then now we film our podcast, The Director Dossiers, in this room too. You can see like we have the same background hooked up right here. But for example, you said like the catering, like where did all the money go for the catering? The only time we needed to spend money on catering is when we were at another location, right? But luckily, my my mom was able to help out in the catering section where, well, like sometimes she couldn't didn't have time to cook, so we would order like sandwiches from Quick Check and stuff, and that, in which case that money would go into the budget. But a lot of the times we'd be filming for most of the time like 3 to 8 or 3 to 9, after Sarah got off work and after Danny was got off work, and we would, and then for lunch or dinner, I guess, we would go over to my house and just watch an episode of The Office while we eat, and then come back over. And also the famous thing is my mom would make these sliders, and they're like hamburger rolls that she would make, but she put like ground beef and cheese and cream cheese and ketchup in there. And we would go over there, I'd eat like 8 of them. And then we'd all come back like, I don't want to make this movie, I'm too tired. Like, what the hell are we doing? Like, it was a terrible idea. But now those sliders amongst the crew, like, amongst me, Danny, and Sarah, are legendary. You know what I mean? But in terms of what was the original question about just how to keep the budget so low? So,
well, how, like, where what did you spend money on, and what did you get for free, essentially?
So the stuff that like technically was for free was just stuff I already had. And so, like, the camera I already had was the Canon 80D, which I got in like 2018. For like something like we were doing, there was no schedule. Like I still have no idea how to schedule. What I did is I just went in Excel and made a list of all the scenes. And then when we film one, I just crossed it out. And then the rest of it was just like, hey, Sarah, are you available on Thursday? Because when we were filming, most of the, like 75-80% of the scenes, especially that are in this room, the only crew was just me, Sarah, and Danny. So I would be on camera, and then Danny was on sound. But we only could film for like 4 hours or 5 hours a day, maybe because Sarah had to work, and Danny had his job as well. So and there were some days where like Danny couldn't make it, so we just had a boom pole for a scene that I knew it wasn't gonna be that complicated. Like if it was just Sarah like sitting at a desk being like, "Give me those goddamn documents," then I would just set up a boom pole with the mic on it, and then but of course if there was like a running scene or something, we would definitely need Danny. And also, like, one of the other luxuries that we had is since we're all just starting out and trying to build a portfolio, and this thing isn't so much, a financial endeavor more than it is like a, experimental creative one. We didn't really have to pay anybody for, the movie. Everybody just did it, for either like to build their own portfolio or just to help out, like my friends and family. People having all these people who were just a phone call away for help, helped make our $2,500 movie feel a whole lot, richer than movies made for $25 million. And when we watched it, it just felt like a big, giant home movie that we can show people who maybe weren't involved in it, and they would like it as well,
Yeah, if someone showed me your film and were like, on a professional level, how much do you think this movie cost? I would probably say $750,000.
Really?
Yeah.
I'll take that. Can I quote you on that? Can I put that on the poster?
Yeah. You can.
All right, good.
I mean, it felt very high quality. It didn't feel like you were living in constraints. It felt like you were telling the story that you wanted to tell. And it did feel like a lot of people were helping you. It felt like you had a big crew, because it really is about being a good storyteller, keeping something engaging, keeping something moving, and acting quality and sound quality. Your sound quality was very high, which I think a lot of people don't know this, but you could have shot on the most expensive camera with the nicest lenses in the world, and if your sound quality is bad, the movie just looks bad. You can't process that it's high quality. Whereas you can shoot on a T3i, which is the main thing I film on for like my personal life, and if you have really good audio, it looks like an expensive. Could you go in a little bit more detail on how you found the cast and crew? And because it sounds like they were all your friends and they were just kind of around. And then also, could you tell me what like the filming days were like? You said they were only about 4 hours long and it took you 4 months to make the movie. Yes. I'd like to know more about like what that looked like.
So I'll try to get through because I would love to talk about every single person that was in the movie, but I know you have a show to run. You know what I mean? But so Sarah, I met Sarah right before we made our that short film Shadowtown I mentioned, and I got in contact with her through my friend Kayla, who I met at OCC with Mark. I think I mentioned that earlier. And then she worked with us on that movie, and then I asked her when I was writing this, I was like, hey, would you be interested? Because she's an actual working actress. She was in She was in that. She had a scene in that show Love Life with Anna Kendrick on HBO. She was recently on FBI's Most Wanted. She does like modeling and stuff. And it was funny because we were filming something, and she went on the phone, and then she came back up and went, guys, I got a part on FBI's Most Wanted. And I said, what did you do? It's a classic joke. But so then of course I was, she said she wanted to do it, and I was like, perfect, because she, now I was very confident that she can carry an entire movie, because the whole thing, she's basically a one-woman show, the movie. So you need somebody who's a pretty good actress to be at the centerpiece of that. And every reaction I've got is just like she was excellent. My friend Mark, who played George in the movie, he's also an actor. He was taking acting classes and stuff when I met him at OCC. And so whenever we make something, he's usually just a given that he's on board somehow. You know what I mean? I was in one role because I didn't know if I'd be a good actor or not. So in the first scene, I just obscured my face, and then I recorded my lines separately, so I knew I had a million shots. Because I was filming that scene. It's at night, and it was like 1 a.m. I was so scared. I was spooked out. I kept looking behind the pole because I thought somebody was behind me. And then I put myself on a Zoom call, so so there's just a little bit of an abstraction between my performance and the audience, because I didn't want to stick out like a sore thumb. And also the reason I did it is because I didn't want the other variable of needing another person to because I'm sure, like, I have friends that probably would have done a little bit better, maybe, even though I think I do okay. But that was just cutting out, especially when you're making movies this way, you got to cut out every variable you can. One of the guys, and I wanted like actual adults to avoid, because I didn't want the movie to be just like to feel like a bunch of kids playing dressed like when you see a student short film and there's like a 17-year-old dressed as a cop, and you're like, what's going on here? Scorsese does the opposite of that in The Irishman, where it's a bunch of old guys playing young people. But I love Scorsese. But my friend, or my dad's friend from high school, Jimmy Houston, does theater. And we went to go see one of his plays, and then I asked him, hey, do you want to be in one of these roles? And he said, sure, excellent. And then my parents, Marissa's parents in the movie, they're just my parents. And the excuse for that, where I was like, obviously they can't just do like a legitimate performance, right? But what I did, well, it's COVID, so I'll just make the joke that they have all these masks on, so you can't see their face.
I loved that.
And then
it was such a funny gag every time.
I'm good. I'm glad. That was one of my parents are usually one of the things that everybody points out about the movie that they really enjoyed. I think they did a really good job, because their performance wasn't really in their facial expressions. It was more in just their body language in like a sort of vaudeville way. I don't know if that's the right word, but they did very well. And then also, since they had a mask on, we can do as many takes as their lines as we wanted. We didn't have to just be like, oh, screw it, that's how they did it on the day, we're stuck with it. You know what I mean? So just cutting out every variable, and then everybody in the movie is pretty much just our friend. One of the guys, Hiram Ortiz, he puts on the Hang On to Your Shorts Film Festival in New Jersey. I got my Shadowtown and Upon Reflection got into that, and they invited me on their podcast once. I became friends with him. So I asked him, like, hey, do you want to do this role? And he was nice enough to help us out. And then the two girls in the office in the beginning are my sister and my sister-in-law. I'm trying to think. Everybody in the beginning is either my friend or a family member. And it's so it's just and sort of giving them scenes that aren't too hard, and that they can do it. Because I don't think there's one of those people, even though a lot of them aren't actors. I never really look at any of their performances and going, I wish I got an actor for that. I really think that everybody did a pretty good job. And then so I was able to contact, I think it was Universal Music Group somehow, I found the lady's LinkedIn, and I just emailed her. And I said, hey, I'm looking for the rights to the song. Our budget's only like $1,000 because the movie was made for $2,500. And they said, okay, you can get the rights for film festivals or something for like a year for like $500. And then it didn't end up playing at any film festival, so I just spent $500 for nothing. But now I know that I could have, But in terms of the rest of the music, that was just copyright-free music that I just kept listening to, like scrolling through like how every library of just songs and after song after song, and then I was just able to use, like, there's no copyright in the song. There's no, it's royalty-free. So I would definitely recommend people use that, because there's a lot of great stuff in there, because I like all the music that is in the movie. And then our friend Danny, the sound engineer, he did there's a scene of Marissa in the bathroom near the end talking to her mom, and then the music in the final scene that he also did he did that on the guitar and made that himself. Was that your question with the music, or was there another aspect?
No, that's
to that?
perfect. And I ran into a similar thing with actually my movie that went to South by Southwest. We were able to we got into South by. We didn't think we would get in, so we had to scramble to get all the rights to the music we had put into the movie. And we couldn't get the rights to, I think, 2 of the songs. We ended up having to replace them anyway. But we reached out and they were like, yeah, great, for festivals, exactly, we'll do it for $500 for 1 year. And so we did the festivals, but then we sold the movie, and our distributor was like, well, now you need to get the real rights to the music. And boy, did that price tag change substantially after we sold the movie. And also some musicians, even with a higher price tag, were like, oh no, we don't want you to distribute the film with our song. And so we had to, it was mostly just the price was too high for us. And so we ended up having to, the festival version of the movie is slightly different with the music than the...
Right.
And I know The Office is true as well. The music on the DVD is different than the music on Netflix because they only negotiated DVD rights because streaming didn't exist yet for all the music on the show, on the TV show. So when they went to streaming, some bands came back and were like, we want more money. So they just had to take their music out of the show. So tell me about your distribution plan, how you came up with it, and what are you going to do?
So in terms of an actual distribution plan, we knew we couldn't just call up a company that's hey, you want to buy our movie to put it in theaters? We knew the theater route would be tough. So I was like, all right, we can just see basically if we made the movie in a DIY type of way, I was sort of experimenting what can I do in terms of distribution in the same manner. So one of the first things I did was see about getting it on Amazon or something like that, because I've heard about Film Hub, and I've heard mixed things on it. I don't know exactly how good it is, but that's a good way to get your movie on things like Amazon and Tubi and other ad supported things and subscription things. But before I did that, I just wanted to see what I can pull off essentially on my own before I do something like that. And basically what I decided me and my friend Danny Barker, who I mentioned earlier, we have a podcast called The Director Dossiers on YouTube and Apple and Spotify, where we do a deep dive on a director's entire filmography historically, and also talk about just overall thoughts of the movie, or just a deep dive on one specific movie in a director's filmography. And so since we're sort of building an audience with that, there's something you can do on the YouTube membership program where it's it's sort of like YouTube's built-in Patreon thing. So what we might start doing that we're going to announce in our next episode on The Shining, which I don't know when that's going to come out yet, but is let's say it's $3, for $3 you get access to watch the movie on YouTube, and then you get also the 3 hours of special features that we made as well. And then once you watch, you have access to that for a month. And then, of course, since we're not really going to have anything else on the subscription for anybody else to watch, they can just cancel it, and it's a one-time transaction fee rather than just a forever subscription. The second thing that we're going to try out is there's something called Gumroad, where it's a digital content distributor thing where you can put on, put a book or something, or a PDF or something, or a video. And you can create your own price, and they just take a 15% cut of it, and you can stream or download videos. And so what we're going to do on there is just and also I checked it that you can put a feature-length movie on there. So I'm okay, so if somebody pays $5 to buy the movie forever, they can download a copy of it that's they can choose maybe how many gigabytes the copy is. I'm going to see if I can do that. Or they can just stream it, and they have access to stream it forever. Because a lot of people who are going to be watching this movie are going to be watching it on their computer or their phones anyway. And so that's another thing that we're going to try out. We don't know how, and that's the thing, we don't know how good these things are going to turn out, but we're self-distributing. So these are the best ways that we can get it directly to people without investing a million bajillion dollars in these distribution platforms that it's well, if you pay us $3,000, we'll get it on this platform or something like that. And the other thing we did is, because we need somewhere else to have the special features that we made. We did 2 commentary tracks, one with just me and the one with the cast and crew. And then I did a 50-minute video that was a screen recording of me in the Premiere Pro timeline, because I edited it on Premiere Pro. going like, this is how we got this shot of like the drone in the air, and this is what we had, all the keyframing we had to do, and it sort of just gets into like the nitty gritty of like the actual editing and stuff, and like shots that we stitch together. And then we did like an 8-minute spoof video on, because like I'm behind the scenes, so like let's say on E.T., the making of E.T., and it's like, oh well, Steven Spielberg was great to work with. I had a really fun time, like those like the talking head interview things interspersed with like footage. We did a spoof of that. So it's like Danny, the sound engineer, going, when I first saw Sarah's performance in this movie, I can truly say that she is a decent actor. Like just, comedy like that. And I actually I almost didn't make it because we filmed it and I was like, I don't know if this is funny. And then I edited it together. I'm like, this is actually, I like this a lot. So we needed somewhere to put that as well. So what we did is we got Blu-rays manufactured. And the original poster we had, my oldest sister, Chris, she is a graphic designer. She does custom drum kits for SJC Drums, which is like a pretty high quality company. And she gave me an original poster for the movie, and then based off of like her artwork for that poster, I didn't even tell you that. So my friend Josh, who did the color grading for this movie, he's also a photographer, and he was able to get a studio for free that we can shoot marketing material with Sarah for. So we got her in a journalist-looking suit, and we had her with like a briefcase and the documents, and she's pretending to like run away from stuff, or she's reading the documents and looking at the camera like, oh, like stuff like that. And we were able to make like poster materials out of that. So my sister Chris made the original poster, and then which is going to be in the Blu-ray as like a slip-in thing, like a piece of paper that's in there. And then because since I learned Photoshop, from my sister, I was able to make designs for like the main poster and the Blu-ray materials for this. So this is the Blu-rays we manufactured. So you see her and she's basically running away from and then I think it says she's chasing a headline, but they are chasing her. Ooh. And then on the back, I just copied other movies that I had in my room. So like some of these movies, I like looked at the back of them and I just copied how those are laid out and sort of made a pretty legit looking thing. I was able to make, I think WTS Media, my dad found it because we were looking for, companies that can produce these. And a lot of the companies, like the minimum is like 500 copies. We don't know how many of these we're going to sell. So I was able to buy 115 of these for about, like shipping included, and also the slip-in thing, which is going to have the original poster and like a QR code that brings you to the director dossiers, Danny's music, like all of the creative output that everybody, the main crew was involved in and what they've done. There's going to be links to everything, work that you can see that that everybody else did, if that makes sense. And so the total cost for like this probably was like $7. So if we sell one for 20, that not counting shipping or anything, that's like a $13 profit. So if we sell it on Amazon, it'll be maybe like $25 depending on how much the shipping is. Like whatever it is, it's going to be $20 plus whatever the shipping is. And if you are in person, because we'll probably go to like flea markets and stuff, and to sell them, it's like $20. And also my dad, since my dad does garage door stuff, he meets a lot of people, especially like people of like like the boomer generation, I guess, like 50 and above. Making a movie is like a big deal to them. They're like, your son made a movie, and they really want to watch it. So he might just have like 10 of these in his truck while he works, and he might be like a traveling salesman for me almost. You know what I mean? So we'll be selling the Blu-rays on Amazon, and if they're not available on Amazon, we'll probably sell them on eBay. But we have a website that maybe you can link in the description of this, where you can just click on the website and you can watch the trailer, and then in the store you'll see buy your own digital copy, which will take you to Gumroad. Then you'll see buy the Blu-ray, which will take you to Amazon or eBay, and then what's the other thing? Maybe the other thing will take you to the YouTube membership program, and then there might be like a PDF for the script that you can get for like $1 probably somewhere. So yeah, just trying to figure out the ways we can do this ourselves, so that if there is any if there's any new territory to sort of map out, that see if I can find it and show it to other people.
What advice would you give, or I guess what do you wish you knew before you made your first feature?
Exhaust like every possible person that you can put on your team. Like as a result of making the documents, we now have my friend Josh, who's part of our team, who's a cinematographer, who's going to be the cinematographer on Beach Days as well. And now we have our friend Fabian, who's going to be another cinematographer on Beach Days if Josh isn't available, and vice versa. And just sort of really leaning into who can help you and what's their expertise and what and what can they contribute to the movie. And also, like I mentioned earlier, I talked about how I had problems with getting the rights to that Slim Whitman song, and I paid $500 for it. Well, since my friend Danny and his bands and the bands that he knows around Asbury, since have their own catalogs of songs and music, we can just use that. And I don't know how much of it is I'm good at finding people who are very helpful and and reliable, and how much of that is just the universe gifting them to me. But it's definitely being able through luck or coincidence or through skill, just finding those valuable people is probably just the best help and the best advice that I can give you, is just try to find people like that. And if you don't, then start making stuff so that you can grow that group of people, because making the documents, it was the catalyst for how we got a lot of the team for our next movie,